English Literature Studies. Welcome back to English Literature Studies. In this video, we are going to study subjective poetry. As discussed in the last video, there are two kinds of poetry, subjective poetry and objective poetry. It all depends on the poet handling the content of the poetry. If the poetry is centered with the ideas, emotions and thoughts of the poet only, then that is subjective poetry. Subjective poetry deals with the emotions of the poet only. It has nothing to do with the observations, ideas, assumptions given by the world. However, subjective poetry describes the feelings, discoveries, beliefs, and much more just with the point of view of the poet. These feelings, discoveries, beliefs are not concerned with the people around him. Whatever he is describing through his poetry belongs to him. Those all feelings, discoveries, assumptions, beliefs, theories are owned by the poet only. The subjective poetry has nothing to do with right or wrong. When poet describes his feelings, when he reflects his feelings, his emotions, ideas, thoughts, all those things have nothing to do with the right or wrong perspective. However, the content of the poetry revolves around his own personality and thoughts with the medium of subjective poetry, as it reflects the thoughts and personality of the poet. When a writer sticks to one character and describes everything with the point of view of that character, that is called limited omniscience. The writer may stick to one character. He just describes everything with the eye of that character. He just sticks to one character. All the content of the poetry surrounds that character. This is called limited omniscience. That is concerned with the third person perspective. So, third person point of view can also be represented in subjective poetry, and that is called limited omniscience. There are some examples of subjective poetry: Ode to the West Wind, written by P.B. Shelley; Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare; Tintern Abbey by William Wordsworth; Ode on Grecian Urn by John Keats. There are four kinds of subjective poetry, or four forms of subjective poetry: lyric, elegy, ode, sonnet. Lyric deals with emotions. This type of poetry, this type of subjective poetry deals with the emotions of the writer. It describes the emotions. Elegy, sad or mourning song. Ode, it is a song addressed to a subject. And sonnet is a poem based on 14 lines. These are the brief descriptions of four kinds of subjective poetry. We will study these four kinds of subjective poetry in detail in a separate video. So this is all about subjective poetry.